The allegations outlined in this federal indictment connect a Troutdale man with ISIS. 31-year-old Hawazin Samir Mothafar is accused of sharing propaganda with the terrorist organization over the past 5 years. Some of that material allegedly includes an article explaining how to kill and maim a target using effective stabbing techniques and a tutorial on detonating explosives. Portland FBI agents traced the material back to Mothafar, who had become a U.S. citizen. Investigators say Mothafar made false statements on immigration documents and denied ties to terrorist organizations. In a statement, U.S. Attorney Billy Williams said in part, "This defendant is a legal permanent resident of the United States who abandoned the country that took him in and instead pledged allegiance to ISIS and repeatedly and diligently promoted its violent objectives." Court documents also suggest Mothafar would open social media and email accounts for ISIS officials to use and was a leading figure in the Islamic State's media network. In a statement, FBI Special Agent in Charge Ren Cannon said in part, "When it comes to cases like this one, a computer and a keyboard can be powerful weapons against enemies of the Islamic State." Court documents also show prosecutors will use evidence collected through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA court. George Washington University has tracked the Islamic State in America since 2014. Up through last month, 217 people in the U.S. had been charged with crimes connected to ISIS. This case marks 218.
Mothafar made his first appearance in court Thursday. Because he's disabled and confined to a wheelchair, he was released under several conditions, including limitations to travel and use of electronic devices. Catherine Cook, KGW News.